better. Today on Readus Reviews, I review Reign of the Supermen, the newest installment in the DC animated movie universe series, and the direct sequel to Death of Superman. In which case, this takes place 6 months after the events of Death of Superman, in which case a whole bunch of Superman wannabes started showing up. You have one with yellow sunglasses over his eyes, you have one that's actually a cyborg, and then of course you have the reveal of Steel and the reveal of Superboy. But don't call him Superboy. And so that she can move on and properly mourn, Lois Lane decides to investigate the origins of these Supermen and reveals a larger plot. In which case we find out when the rest of the galaxy knows that there is no longer a world with a Superman. So with that, readers, I have to say, when it comes to the story, I feel that they took my critiques that I had with Death of Superman and applied them to this. Specifically how I felt that in Death of Superman they sacrificed the continuity they have already established since War onward for the sake of doing an accurate adaptation of the Death of Superman arc. I say that because as I was watching the Reign of Superman, I felt that they did a better job at balancing the two out. The movie takes the source material and does a better job of folding it into the pre-existing canon that the movies already had, while also staying true to the arc overall. Whereas the animated movie universe stuff felt like it was shoehorned in Death of Superman, Reign of the Supermen's use of the continuity felt more natural. Specifically given the big reveal regarding the mastermind of everything that happened between these two movies. With that being said, seeing the overarching story between the two films and the intent of this one, the overall story of this movie specifically as a DC animated movie universe movie kind of falters as being a part 2 to a less than stellar, in my opinion, part 1. Like, if it were just like a 3-hour long and some change ass movie like The Dark Knight Returns complete version was, I would probably put this more in high regard, considering that we would have both of these as one coherent piece. Specifically because I feel like I would be a bit less harsh criticizing the Death of Superman portion of this like 3-hour plus long movie for not having the stuff pre-established in the movieverse if I knew that I was going to get that later on in the film. Like, don't get me wrong, I would still be critiquing the movie about the other things I had a problem with, specifically the relationship between Clark and Diana just completely going away just to favor Lois because of it being faithful to the story. But at least the Death of Superman portion that we got back in summer of 2018 wouldn't have felt like it didn't fit for me, considering that this was immediately coming afterward. So with that being said, let's talk about some characters that stood out to me the most. Starting with Lois Lane. You thought I was about to say Superman, weren't you? Nah, not today. Lois was definitely more prominent and more refreshing to watch than she was in Death of Superman. And that's mostly due to the fact that we got to actually see her be Lois Lane. Like, we get that sense of her character that we missed out on in Death of Superman, because in Death of Superman, we just got a chance to know her as the love interest. We never got a chance to know her as Lois Lane, because none of the DC animated movie universe movies got a chance for us to get to know her as Lois Lane. Like, because we never got that exposure to her character from, like, Justice League War onward, we never got that type of connection with her. And considering the other characters that we did get a chance to connect with over the course of this movie universe, Reign of the Supermen was actually our very first real in-depth experience of seeing Lois Lane as Lois Lane. And I'm kind of grateful for that. Superboy's development was amazing to watch. I'm not even gonna lie. A lot of the 21st century stuff that they added in, like being a YouTube celebrity or just being a celebrity in general, definitely helped out his character, in my opinion. I say that because I felt that it enhanced both the high points and the low points that we get to see from Superboy over the course of this movie. And personally, I would have loved to see more. Because from what we were exposed to in this movie, seeing him try and find himself and find his place in this world while using the facade of celebrity and being popular as like a coping mechanism slash antidepressant, for lack of better words, it was very interesting to see him balance. And honestly, if they do another Teen Titans animated movie in the same universe, I would still like to see him cope with that balance. I think it would be a pretty good, cool dynamic, especially dealing with other young superheroes. And personally, as a fan of Steel, I was both excited and disappointed in how he was used in this movie at the same time. Excited and pleased because I got a chance to see him be a boss in his own right, both in and out of the suit. Disappointed because while it did help us get a chance to get to know Lois's character a bit better, he ends up becoming a second banana to her because of it. A very important second banana, but a second banana nonetheless. So with that being said, readers, there are specifically one thing that I like and one thing that I dislike about this movie, and they're a bit spoiler heavy. So if you want to like skip that, go to this time mark. You there yet? Fuck it, here we go. The one other thing that I like about this movie is the overall use of Hank Henshaw / the cyborg Superman. I feel that while his comic book counterpart's reasoning for hating Superman was fine for what it was, his motives in this movie are more personal and reasonable and makes him a formidable threat. Still crazy, do not get me wrong, but at least in the movie you can see how a seed of hatred was planted and how it reasonably grew into the giant-ass tree that it was. I also like how this movie took the superheroes make their own arch nemesis trope and applied it to this character, and it actually worked. You know, kind of like how Syndrome was in Incredibles, or like how they did it in that one episode of The Fairly Odd Parents. No, I'm not even going to put up a picture because you know exactly which episode I'm talking about. And the one thing I don't necessarily like, not only in this movie, but how this animated movieverse series has been handling it overall, is the constant use of Darkseid. And no, this is not me saying that I do not like Darkseid being the main villain in this movieverse universe. I actually enjoy the fact that we get more of the New Gods in this ever since Darkseid became so popular. And it's not even because of how they changed Doomsday's origins to be a product of Darkseid to like send to Earth specifically for the event of killing Superman so that he can easily get rid of the Justice League and invade Earth. That's fine. That was perfectly fine. That was the most reasonable thing. My gripe is that the way the Darkseid is being utilized in this animated movie universe is a grave injustice to the character. Like, yes, he makes sound strategies and tactics like Darkseid would, but he comes across more like Mongol than Darkseid half the time. Now, with the end credit scene of this movie, it looks like the next installment of this animated movieverse series is probably going to be like the final installment of the Darkseid chapter in this entire series, and they might borrow from what it looks like Darkseid War or even Final Crisis written by Grant Morrison. And if that's the case, then I really do hope that there's a proper return to Darkseid form there, because as far as how he's been represented in this movieverse universe, I'm just whelmed. But other than that, readers, Reign of the Superman fixed and addressed a lot of the problems that I felt made Death of Superman just feel off. It did a better job at delving into characters that we should have gotten a chance to know since the very first installment of the series, and did a better job at meshing together pre-existing continuity and adaptation. However, in my opinion, the story suffers a bit from being the second part of a less than stellar first, when in actuality it would have just been smarter to combine both of these movies into a longer movie, with better pacing throughout it, just so it can be more cohesive from the get-go. That way, that critique of mine wouldn't necessarily exist. I can see why people would want to own this, even if they don't necessarily own The Death of Superman, but I personally believe that if you don't mind The Death of Superman, or aren't as critical as I am about the movie, then I could see you owning this. But as far as me personally, because Death of Superman exists as a solo movie, and this being the follow-up, it's a rental for me. Anyway, readers, your homework assignment for the day. Write in the comment section below what you thought of Reign of the Supermen if you've seen it. If you want to help financially support the channel, you can join my Patreon by clicking the card at the end of the video or in the link in the description down below, where you can also find a link to my merchandise store. Or if you'd rather give a one-time donation, you can find the links to my PayPal and my Ko-fi account in the description box as well. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because I post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and every other Friday. But until then, this is Readus 101. Class dismissed.